Forward. So we're not going to be live on YouTube, unfortunately. We'll there's some issue with going on there, but we are recording. So hello everyone, and welcome to the May 28th, 2024 regular council meeting for the Village of Lytton. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone to please turn off your videos and mute your microphones, and I'll council to begin this meeting. And we're not going to be recording onto YouTube this evening, but it will be recorded and put up online this evening or tomorrow morning. So over to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So I call this regular council meeting of May 28th, 2024 to order at 7:02. I want to begin by recognizing that the Village of Lytton is located on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Ntlaka'pam people. In the room this evening, we have Councillor McCann, Councillor Lightfoot, Councillor Michelle, and myself, Mayor O'Connor, and Councillor Tross is joining us via Zoom. We also have, Lisa Storoshenko, our corporate officer, and we have a special guest, and Brian Baxter is joining us here at the table, and we have a special guest, Jim McDonald. He's the village's emergency management consultant, who's joining us to watch our council meeting tonight. So we'll move on to item number 3, which is adoption of the agenda. And before we put the motion forward, there is an amendment to the agenda. Item number 8.3.2 is going to be removed. So can I please have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Lightfoot, seconder. Councillor McCann. All those in favor? Carried. We'll move on to adoption of the minutes of May 14th. So a motion, please.
Also moved.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle. Are there any errors or omissions from those minutes? No? All those in favor? Carried. All right, we'll move right on to, we're going to move right on to item number 7, which is public comment. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa.
Thank you. So members of the public are now invited to comment on matters related to the agenda. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. You can find that by clicking on the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and then click raise hand. And when it's your turn, I'll read your name and we'll ask you to unmute yourself. And then you'll get a pop-up on your screen asking you to unmute, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Speakers are asked to please state and spell your name, say your address, and the agenda item number that you are speaking to. So if anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now. All right, I'll call for a second time. If there's anyone that wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function now. Still see no one, and I'll call for a third time. If anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now at the bottom of your screen under reactions. I don't have anybody online, so back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, which is staff reports. And I'm going to turn it right over to our CAO, Diane Lumbercat. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who is on the call to provide the report for the municipal website redesign.
Thanks very much, Mayor and Council. I'll just give you a bit of an introduction about the website project and RFP, and then where we've landed with some resolutions recommended. The village's current website, lytton.ca, was launched in 2021 before the Lytton Creek fire. It's currently used as the primary tool for communicating with property owners, residents, displaced community members, buildings, contractors and developers, and business owners as the village rebuilds. It's also the main repository for information about municipal programs, projects, and services, and for statutory public notices. Staff have been working to keep the content updated on the website, but there are current issues and limitations with its design, navigation, and functionality. On March 20th, the village posted a request for proposals for municipal website redesign to BC Bid, and this closed on April 10th. We received 24 completed proposals, which CAO Mombercat and I evaluated according to the proponent's relevant experience, project plans, project teams, and proposal prices. The highest score, considering all criteria, was achieved by Up and Up. This vendor is based in Victoria, BC, and is experienced in developing websites for local governments, including several small municipalities in BC, like the City of Prince Rupert, Village of Nakusp, and Town of Golden. While several vendors recommended using proprietary content management systems, Up and Up has proposed using Drupal. This is a standard open source content management system, so the back end of the website that is used by more than half of all government organizations internationally. This vendor has also recommended pairing it with CivicKit, which is a local government template or theme. This would give the village the benefit of a standard municipal functionality without reinventing the wheel. Staff have requested some additions to the scope of Up and Up's original proposal to ensure that it meets the village's needs, including integration with MailChimp for the village's e-newsletter and CivicWeb for the village's council meeting management. Migration of content and files from the existing website, including bylaws, images, and news, and extending the deadline to make sure that we can deliver it. Up and Up provided an updated quote of $19,550 plus tax, in addition to an annual fee of $2,760 for maintenance, security updates, ongoing platform updates, hosting, and website backups. I've met with the Up and Up team, who provided a demonstration of the CivicKit template, and I'm confident that it will meet the village's needs. I've also talked to the Director of Communications for the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, who's worked with the vendor for 2 projects and spoke highly of their professionalism and customer service. With that in mind, I'd like to make 2 recommendations. One, the council directs staff to award a contract of $19,550 plus tax to Up and Up for the village's website redesign. And 2, that council authorize CAO Mombercat to execute the contract. We anticipate that the project will start in June and be completed by the end of August. Staff and council will be engaged in the project, and there will be opportunities to train additional staff to update and use the website when it's launched. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Any? Councillor McCann. Sorry.
Yes, I do.
You want to make the motion?
Motion to make the motion first.
Well, we can put the motion on the floor first if you like. Yes. So who would like to make that motion? Recommended motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Seconder? Deswa? Okay. So I put, and now any comments or questions?
Yeah, just questions. Melissa, I remember the village going through this before the fire. And so that means that this current website has lasted maybe 4 years. And so what needs to happen to these websites so that you're not kind of coming back every 4 years and starting all over again with somebody new? Like, do you see the way this is set up? Like, it sounds like our staff will be able to go in and maintain that. If something happens and we don't have a lot of staff over time, I'm looking at how long and how durable, you understand what I'm saying? This platform is going to be over the long term, or will we like?
Yeah, those are definitely things that we've been keeping in mind when we're evaluating the proposals. So building something on Drupal, which is a standard content management system with fewer needs for upgrading plugins and fewer security risks than something like WordPress, which it's currently on. Using standard sort of design and functionality and navigation, which isn't set up in the current website. Building clean pages to start and having an easy backend for staff to update. I think one of the goals too is to really leave this as a legacy that can be maintained by staff easily. Recognizing that staff are going to be smaller once the recovery and rebuilding is done. That is the intention with this project. One of the limitations currently is not having any sort of back-end IT support with the website. So when things break, there isn't someone updating them. And WordPress tends to have lots of pieces that need regular updating, which we haven't been doing. We've been focused on the content.
Thank you.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Toss?
Thank you. Actually, Melissa, thank you so much. I think most of them were answered because I was going to ask about Civic Kit, but it sounds like you've had a good look at that because sometimes the software sounds great, but if you haven't actually used it, it can be problematic. But it sounds like you've investigated.
Yeah, and it's more of a template. So the design part, the software itself is the Drupal content management system. And I think that does give some measure of comfort that it's a standard backend with some design functionality, which is intended specifically for local governments. It anticipates a lot of the village needs. And I think working with a vendor that's used to working with small municipalities too, this is a sweet spot where they're not trying to oversell functionality for a $300,000 community, but still trying to meet the needs that are continuing to evolve for communities.
Excellent. And you answered also my other question, which was which other municipalities have used it? And that was Squamish. I think the regional district, you said?
So Squamish are using the vendor, but not this template. So they've used the contractor. Right. Towns like the city of Prince Rupert are using Civic Kit and this vendor, the village of Nakusp, the town of Golden, and several I think they've got 80 or so in the small municipality bucket. So
last question is, or more of a comment, is just that engagement opportunities with village, to stress that, because I think a few of our residents have expressed interest in being involved and have comments about that. You probably talked to them about the website, and having links to news articles. I know that happens in our school district, which is really nice. And then to also local organizations like the chamber and the museum, I'm assuming will happen. And a bigger question maybe to our CAO or to council is around the branding. When do we look at?
So Councillor Toss, I'm just wondering, the motion we have on the floor is about directing the contract. So maybe we can have that discussion.
Okay, will that be looked at in the future? Because I think that's relevant to the website.
Sorry, are you directing that to me, Councillor Kloss?
No, I'm just wondering if there's a discussion planned for that from council, or could we put that on the table then for a future discussion?
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that for future discussion.
Thank you, CAO Marquette. That's great.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Lightfoot.
It looks excellent presentation, Melissa, and it looks like an excellent product. I know, as Jennifer stated, some of our viewers have been frustrated navigating our current site. So by this fall, we should all be in good shape. Thanks for doing that work.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Melissa, for that.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 8.2, CFO Diane Mombarquette, and the monthly reporting, the Province of BC Contribution Agreement.
Thank you very much, Mayor O'Connor. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you here. This is our monthly report seeking authorization to submit the claim to the provincial government under the contribution agreement for the recovery funding. So these are expenses incurred up until the end of April, And for the month of April, the total expenditures was 78,489. That brings our total expenses to date under this grant program to 6,133,760. So we the total grant is 17.5 something. And we're 6.1 into it. So this is a regular request for the approval. And if anybody has any questions about any of the information in the report, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Let's put the motion forward. Who would like to move the recommended motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Michelle?
We're making both.
Yes, they're both together. It's a two-part motion. And are there any comments or questions? Okay, so all those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 8.3.1, which is recovery manager. And I see Dawn is on. We're going to move him. Have him.
Hi,
there he is.
can you hear
Hi,
me?
Dawn.
Are we good? Hi.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, this report is about a submission to Infrastructure Canada to do another feasibility study concept plan. This is for the community fire emergency rescue, and request is for council to authorize a submission for us to request funding from Infrastructure Canada. As everyone knows, the Village of Lytton was approved for money from Infrastructure Canada under the Green Inclusive Community Buildings Program. Back in the fall 2023, when the village hosted a community meeting, both the folks in person and online listed the fire hall as the priority project. Since then, the village has been able to have a potential site picked. That's along the highway, the Trans-Canada Highway, right beside the Lytton Cemetery. Two pieces of property that juxtapose or adjacent to that property have been acquired to give us a large enough space and access point to investigate the viability of this property or the site for new fire hall, emergency services, and community spaces. We'd like to request planning dollars from Infrastructure Canada to start developing the concept plan. Based on the complexity of the build, as well as the location, this will probably include architectural, cultural advisor, engineering, and cost consultants. The estimated dollar value is just a guess at this point, but to a maximum upside of 1.2 million. That's because of the engineering and the architecture that's probably required. And that's based on the idea that the building itself at about 30,000 square feet, $1,000 a square foot would cost about 30 million. And at 4% of the 30 million of the capital build is kind of the rule of thumb for infrastructure feasibility studies of this type. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. We have a recommended motion. Councillor Lightfoot, seconder. Councillor McCann, are there any comments or questions for Dawn? Councillor Lightfoot.
I'm just not sure I heard Dawn correctly. Are you saying that the final structure would cost $30 million?
It could be up to $30 million. If it's 30,000 square feet, this is part of what the feasibility study will take into account. Similar structures for fire and rescue and community buildings these days are costing about $1,000 a square foot.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Councillor McCann.
So this is to basically start this process, right, Dawn? And then once we get into it, how long does this one take? Because this sounds pretty complicated. And how much of a time frame do we have to add things like, you know, if the Emergency Services BC does make up their mind and does decide they want to partner in this kind of a building, how much time is there gonna be to allow that kind of flexibility in adding things after, right? So you can kind of plan for it, and then you sort of reach a point where you have to know you're gonna do it, and then you cut it off and you say, okay, this is what we're gonna have to go with. So is there like, do you have any kind of rough time schedule for stuff like that?
All those factors have kind of been included. This would take much longer than, say, the concept plan for the community hub that we've been doing, mainly because of the complexity of the structure and what's going in there. I think the hardest issue that you guys all know better than I do was the limited space that's available for building a structure this size, and the complications with access to the highway in that location, right?
Yeah.
If ignoring things like the slope and the arc, that's archaeology, that makes things complex enough, as well as there are certain standards provincially that we'd have to follow. I think there's more than enough time to include future things like emergency management or other factors. That's part of the overall discussion as part of the feasibility. We're going to have to do quite a bit more consultation, not just with local government and community, but as well as with different levels of governments, ranging, say, from finesse to EMCR and whatnot, BC Wildfire, for example, just so we can make sure we get it right, because it's not like something you build every day.
No.
Right. It's better to take the time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dawn. Are there any other comments or questions?
So,
Councillor Toss.
O'Connor, just so I'm clear, so it's $1.2 million to plan and create the feasibility study?
To a maximum. That's just a rough rule of thumb. It probably won't be that much, I will be honest. But it's based on the idea that if it's a $30 million building, typically you spend, if it was for this type of infrastructure, up to 4% of that capital cost on the planning. That's mainly because of the pre-engineering and consulting.
And that typically, though, goes with the developer would be doing the planning as well, like in the New West, for example, they worked with the architects. So I'm wondering where that 1 point is. That does that include the architecture? Like, it seems like a lot of money. I'm not sure I'm prepared to vote in favor of this with that dollar amount for planning.
No, it's fair enough. That's pretty standard of how it goes. Like you bring up New West, for example, that's exactly how New West did it as well. They paid for their own architecture and own engineering and analysis, and then they went out to bid, and that same builder also had their own architect and engineering, right? But at least they had the city of New West, and most municipalities or governments that do this have their own baseline first before relying on an outsider.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Councillor Toss, do you have another question?
I'm still following up with that question. So was the geotech work included in that 1.2 mil? Like is that going to be retroactively applied? Because we've spent some money on this property already. I don't think I can justify $1.2 million for planning.
It will be retroactively applied. This is part of the overall, right? There's going to be quite a bit more geotech that will have to be done.
And that would be in the 1.2?
Yes, that's all part of the engineering.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, all those in favor? And opposed? Okay, thank you. Carried. All right, we move on to item number 8.4.1, which is Director of Development. And Berta is on the call tonight regarding civic addressing policy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be here again with you guys tonight. The reason we brought forward this policy for addressing is to create to give clarity in terms of the addressing policy. It ensures that other agencies that in the future will be working with the Village of Lytton, such as TNRD or Ministry of Transportation, have and use the same protocols that are in place already. Those There is a caveat, however, which is not normally in an addressing policy, but is in this one, which indicates those people who are rebuilding a home on a property that was previously there will retain their previous address regardless of which direction the home is. So as we know, especially in Lytton, there's a lot of corner properties and someone may be facing south or faced south pre-fire, and after fire, maybe they're facing west. Normally that would constitute a change of address, but in the village of Lytton, we've opted not to go this way. Another reason we're bringing this to you now at this point is we are starting to hear and see that some properties are looking to be consolidated and or subdivided. And if that happens, they need new addresses. So a policy does need to be in place. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. So we have a recommended motion to adopt this policy. Who would like to make that motion? Thank you, Councillor McCann, seconder, Councillor Lightfoot. Are there any comments or questions regarding this addressing policy? Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I think it's down with the assignment of road names that in 4.6 that local First Nations are added to the road naming approval process in some regard. I'm not sure how that could be fit in there, Birta, but could we amend it to that?
Absolutely.
I think it is maybe 4.6. And then there was like prior to an adding blah, 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 the proposed names. Yeah, so everything where there is any sort of consultation or request for road namings to be added, there we go. A list of potential road names may be added to this policy, and that local First Nations would be invited to participate.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Lightfoot.
Actually, I highlighted 4.5 where it says village committees, commissions, and community organizations may periodically, I think, be solicited for new names. I believe that's where Councillor Toss.
Thank you.
To include First Nations.
Yes, that would make sense.
Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot.
Berta, you got that? Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
I do now. Yes, thank you. And thank you for catching it. That is an oversight that should not have been.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Yeah. Carried. Okay, so we're going to move on to accessory dwelling units. And Berta, you're also going to be taking this one.
I am. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Oh my goodness. Okay. I always love when I can share my screen and I can't see it. So just bear with me a moment here. And it was so tiny. Come on. Can you confirm what you're seeing? Please.
We are seeing something. I'm not sure what we're seeing.
Like your background.
We have it now?
There.
Yes. Okay, good. We had mountains before, didn't we? Thank you. Sorry about that. That took quite a few clicks. So thank you, Council. As per our last meeting, we had talked about tiny homes and secondary homes, and Council had passed a resolution for us to move forward and bring back a report with some more information. So I just want to recap where we are right now and where we can go and some of the challenges we may have. So the terminology that we've put on the screen is accessory dwelling units. It is the terminology that we're using because it aligns with the provincial regulations that changed with Bill 44, where they suggested and encouraged that municipalities look at accessory dwelling units. And in the old days, we used to call them carriage houses or garden suites, something that we talked about last time. So just to recall, currently we are at the Village of Lytton allowing secondary suites within a principal residence. They are, however, limited to 90 square meters or 968 square feet. One of the things that you've asked us to do is to explore other options. And the options that we are putting forward to you today in the exploration is about allowing a second dwelling unit on a property, or even going up to 4 dwelling units. The reason we're not moving forward with a bylaw or anything of that sort is there are a few challenges that need to be looked at, and we need to look in terms of multiple areas of the village to move forward. So there needs to be infrastructure capacity to be able to service 4 units on a lot. And as we know in Lytton, a lot of the lot sizes are quite small. So lot size comes into it. And of course, the road network capacity. So in other words, that the roads are wide enough, etc., to accommodate multiple dwelling units. In the report, we provided a number of different scenarios for you to consider. And the way the table is set up is we've got the number of lots. We've kind of fade into different colors here, or the number of dwelling units per lot in this table here, what the option is and how it would look. And I'm going to give you a few graphics in the next couple of slides because just to get a real feel for what it looks. So at this moment in time, the Village of Lytton allows a principal dwelling on every lot. There is a zone that allows for a duplex, for duplexes on lots that are zoned R2. And we have obviously also have allowed principal dwellings with secondary suites. The first new option that we can consider is a principal dwelling and an accessory dwelling unit. And that is much like the picture that is just on the bottom corner here. We've got a primary home with an accessory dwelling unit, mostly behind the property. Sometimes they can be in front. It really is not terribly important in which order they are. The next order that we're looking at is number 2 and 3, which would allow up to 3 units per lot. So here we're looking at a duplex with a secondary suite, or again, a duplex with an accessory dwelling unit. And then the final option that we're looking at is number 4 and 5. Number 4 being a principal dwelling and a second principal dwelling, or number 5, a duplex with an accessory building. So let's go into a couple of photos around it, and I'll tell you exactly why it shows these in just a moment. So my arrows didn't work out, so I'm hoping my arrow shows here. Right now, we allow a primary unit with secondary, and they can be in either order. Most people always imagine that suites are in the basement, but they can be in the attic, they can be attached in other ways. What we're recommending is to allow an accessory dwelling unit, which means that the secondary suite is in a separate building. The other drawing is a layout. And the reason I chose this one to show you, it shows what in BC tends to be a rather standard lot. It's a 50 by 120. I know Lytton has often a lot of its smaller lots and the lots are configured a little bit, but I wanted to give you a visual graphic on how that could look. So generally the first one on the left-hand side here is a single family home, or perhaps a single family home with a secondary suite in it, or even a duplex. It really depends on how the configuration works for the landowner and their family situation. We can also look at it as being a very long and narrow type of building, or more traditionally, we look at 2 even buildings. That would be 2 dwellings on one property, or a dwelling and a secondary unit. The other thing I just wanted to do is look at a few more graphics here, and I do hope that they're visually working for you. I tried to make them as big as possible. And this comes, as you can see, directly out of the province's small-scale multi-housing graphics that they've provided. And every color is a different unit. So in this top one here, we've got duplex on top with a basement being, again, or the lower floor, let's call it that, being a suite with a accessory unit. This one, of course, looks more like a duplex with 2 suites in it, a cluster of 4, and a number of different forms. One of the things that we mentioned in the report as well is we're looking at the use. So what are the uses that Lytton would like to have on their properties, and how dense would they like to go is really the question. Oh, and here we are at that question. So where we have landed as from a planning perspective is that we do need to do a little bit more investigation. We know that the inventory or the report for the infrastructure is going as we speak right now. And that's going to obviously influence very strongly what the capacity of the water and the sewer systems in the village are to accommodate additional units. I think that will then influence if there are areas in town versus it being the blanket of the whole town that could possibly have some infill development. That's the terminology we tend to use with it, and how that infill development looks. And again, on my graphic here, I tried to show you all kinds of different ways that we can configure it and to move forward. So the recommendation that is in the report is that council direct staff to prepare a zoning bylaw to facilitate one of the options outlined in the table that was shown previously. And if you'd like for your discussion, I'm happy to go back and put that table on the screen because it might be easier for any kind of conversation. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. We have a recommended motion to receive this report for information. Who would like to put that forward? Councillor Lightfoot and a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Are there any comments or questions about this report? At this time, Councillor Toss.
Just thank you so very much, Birta. It was very clear, and I appreciate that the infrastructure and the lot side and the road capacity are all limiting factors. Are you looking for an additional resolution tonight, or are you just for information?
Thank you through the mayor. It is really, it's council's discretion. Obviously we're providing information, and if that's something needs some time to look at, or if you wish to direct us as staff to start moving on some of these concepts, like I said, it would be prudent to wait until the infrastructure plan is available, because that is really going to be the biggest factor in dictating where it's appropriate to put infill housing.
Thank you for that, Birta, because I mean, I was thinking the same thing, is that to me, I don't have enough information. I don't understand it fully enough to be putting a motion forward at this time. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor McCann?
Yeah, Birta, a lot of this zoning stuff connects to the official community plan, and you'll be talking more about that, I'm sure. But I was thinking about this, trying to make it clear in my brain, and it really never is. But it seems like we are moving towards amending our community plan bit by bit here as we go through a lot of this stuff. And this probably isn't the right time to ask this question, but I'm wondering, like, when we do actually enter into a community planning process with the official community plan, these things are already done ahead of time. So at that point in time, you kind of have a second look at it and see if it needs to be changed, or if you basically are adopting it as it stands, like whatever the council decides in the next few months, let's say. This process wouldn't have to necessarily start all over again.
If CAO Mombercat is okay with me following up with that question, I'm happy to answer it. So generally, and she gives me a nod. Okay, good. I should wait for that first. What we are in this interesting situation in Lytton on many accounts. So one of the accounts is that both our zoning bylaw and our OCP are quite old. Mm-hmm. Quite old, as you know, you've heard us talk 100 times before. It's from the 90s, and that's like almost 25 years ago. Let's be frank, right? So a lot of the patches that we have been working on in the zoning bylaw are really just patches to the zoning bylaw. And it's one of the things that we're thinking about, and you've obviously asked us to think about, is in the rebuild, is there something that we should ensure that the villagers can consider in their rebuild? Because we're in an unusual situation that we're starting with a blank slate. And so there might be some opportunities that would be really beneficial for people to look at while they're doing their or they're planning for their homes right now. And so therefore, this is why this is coming up right now at this time. The councillor also spoke about the OCP. And as you know, the next piece that we're going to be talking with you about on this agenda is about the OCP. So again, if you remember, the OCP is the vision document. And the work that we're doing in that vision document is work that we need to do. And we'll go into that a little bit more detail when Corey presents this, versus this is the zoning bylaw. And again, we're looking at, is it the best time right now to make some of these adjustments so that the villagers can rebuild with more options? And that's essentially it. In an ideal world, we do a new OCP, we do a new zoning bylaw, they speak together in a very coherent language, but that truthfully is a relatively long process. And we know people want to rebuild today. They don't want to wait another few years to rebuild.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
CAO Member Cat.
Thank you. I'd just like to add on to what Birta has said there. I think, a lot of this work that we're doing both on the zoning bylaw and on the OCP, I think Councillor McCann, you described it properly. It will come forward and we'll take a second look at it. But as Birta just described, when the OCP is done, the language that we may, if we were to do a zoning bylaw amendment, for example, to allow these accessory dwelling units, the language of it might not fit anymore with the OCP. The concept would still fit. But some of the language, we would want to have it all, kind of consistent and lined up so the two documents, kind of work together really seamlessly. Where right now they don't really, and the more that we, make these tweaks, the less they work well together.
Yes.
But I guess I just throw that out there. I don't think this work is a waste of time. We're just prioritizing some of the pieces that we'll be able to use in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Councillor Lightfoot.
When I read this initially, I thought we were needing to select an option.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave it some thought, and Berta, you said that, infrastructure was one concern, but if you look at the new one, which is just the principal building and the accessory building, there's really no difference in the infrastructure demand than having a duplex or a house with a suite in the basement. So that concern is nothing that we need to recognize. On the other hand, I don't want to waste staff time on things that will have to be redone in the future, but I'm wondering if the new one, principal dwelling and accessory dwelling unit, might be something that we bring back to the table shortly, because I think there may be interest in people designing their lots. Mm-hmm. The other options, because of the lot size in Lytton, I don't know that many of them will be viable. But the carriage house concept, I think, has a lot of value, and I think it's appealing to a lot of people in the rebuild phase. Just a comment.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Toss?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lightfoot. I totally agree, and looking at it with the services in mind. On that note, as far as collecting utilities goes, does it matter if they're detached or within the same dwelling? So are we as the village going to collect one set of utilities, i.e. $192 every 3 months that it was, or will it be per dwelling unit?
CAO Monbriquette, do you have any?
Well, I mean, we haven't really thought about it at all to this point, because how we would do that. You would have as the water and sewer usage of another house, another home, and so somebody's got to pay for that, right? And so it usually makes sense for the user fees to be levied on the user of the services versus having everyone's fees higher, because it's got to be covered somewhere.
I think Birta wanted to comment on that. It's just because if it was in one building, it was one sewer line, one water line potentially going into the building, as opposed to a detached structure. So that's the basis. Sorry, Birta.
No worries. Many different municipalities handle it in a different way. Generally, there is one sewer, one water line, but there's 2 meters. So there's a meter on the carriage house and a meter on the main home. And then there is a formula often that they use in terms of how to determine how the sewerage, garbage collection and all those other things are charged for the additional unit.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lightfoot.
I just want to clarify, my comments were not about fees or charges or
No.
whatever. It was the capacity of the system to feed those demands.
Yeah, I was making a comment. Yeah.
Okay. There's no other comments or questions. All those in favor of receiving this report? Carried. All right. Now we will move on to item number 8.4.3. And Corey is with us, and she's going to be presenting the OCP permit areas project. There she is. Good evening, Corey.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lovely to see you. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen, and goodness knows I watch Beer to have this conundrum each time, so I'm gonna hope that I choose the right thing. Did I choose the right thing?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Thanks. There were a lot of options to choose from. Okay, so just to set you up for our continued discussion, essentially, you'll remember that back in about this time last year, council made a resolution to suspend the development permit areas and the temporary use permit areas until they had an opportunity to review and accept maps defining each of those areas and or to reconsider the relevance of the guidelines or those individual permit areas themselves. On August 9th, council directed staff to proceed with the project. And we had originally a project plan that we are now, I've got to go onto a different screen. I see why Melissa was looking sideways now. There we go. Okay. So we agreed that there was a lot of information to share. So recognizing that, you know, this is a key function, a really important function of local government, you know, so it's really relevant for the community. And as you've just discussed, sometimes, you know, we have to take a moment and determine if there's something that we can do now that will benefit the community in the short run, recognizing that we will also be able to carry those benefits over in the longer term as well. So our goal, of course, is always to rebuild the village, and we need to balance it with our responsibilities for managing risk, liability, and of course, legislative compliance. There's been a lot of changes to the Local Government Act. We've just, again, heard from Birta on some of those changes. It's probably a good time for us to look at things and be selective for sure, but consider what needs to be done right away to help people with that rebuilding. We want to balance everyone's interests, neighbors, developers, the local government, broader community, First Nations, all the folks who make up our community that we can think of. So we agreed to an updated strategy. Last time we met, we talked about phase one. We made some summary comments. We requested some additional technical detail about riparian areas. And we recommended a single development permit and temporary use permit area for each set of guidelines by the type. And we would rename those for simplicity. So I'm bouncing back and forth between these slides because I'm speaking to both of them in some regards. So in order to effectively present and consider all of this information, we agreed to this updated set of steps. Today, May 28th, we're going to look at what we've called Report 1. So you'll probably see on footers and whatnot, we'll identify the report number so you can tie it back to this plan of action, if you will. Of course, at the very end, once all the reports have been presented, we've had a good conversation, and we have the opportunity to review proposed bylaw changes. We will then, of course, go out with those bylaws and consult with the various agencies through the formal process. So there's a number of different things that will occur as we move along. So report number 1, what are we doing tonight? Well, we have a few things in your package, and I hope you've all had a chance to mull those things over. The first attachment is the OCP future land use map. This reproduces the map that is contained within the adopted bylaw right now. We've done a similar thing for the zoning bylaw, but this was really the first step in building the remainder of the maps for the development permit and temporary use permit areas. So we had a GIS consultant create these, so we had a place to move forward from. The next 2 things are the summary tables. And essentially, I've provided these so that you can see where we are now, and just some very light comments in terms of suggested changes. The next thing is really the meat of what we're looking at tonight. So let's set the stage. You'll recognize this graphic. Again, it's something we shared quite a while ago with you. And what I'd like to show is how we're working with that existing framework. So we talk about the vision and the values of the official community plan informing the objectives, the policies, and the guidelines. Those are the things that we're going to discuss now. And we'll do it in a staged process for each of the development permit areas as we go. So, as I said, here again, still setting the stage. Here's the future land use map. Gives us a good idea. You'll recognize that there are some special development areas which are distinctly different than what we're talking about. And I just want to highlight that so that if there's any questions about that, why am I not using the same language? It is a separate thing. So the maps for the development permit areas and the temporary use permit areas, unfortunately, were not reflected on this map or recovered. So we created the future land use map again and the zoning map again. As I mentioned, a couple of attachments, just summarizing, giving you some grounding. Here's where we're starting from. So this is an actual copy and paste from the bylaw. So you can have a look at that. You don't have to take out the whole bylaw. Those tables hopefully will simplify the process for you. As we look at each of the permit areas, and tonight we'll start with the general permit area guidelines, we'll cover the topics in the same way each time. So it'll be repeated. You'll see this framework repeated again and again. We'll have an introduction. We'll lay out the legal authorities, overview the designations. Then we're going to talk about the purpose of these particular guidelines. And then there'll be guidelines specific to that area. The guidelines are predicated on the basis of the objectives and policies. Now, there are objectives and policies already contained within the official community plan. So we've leaned where we can on those things. Where we need to provide a little more fulsome information, because let's face it, the bylaw came from a long time ago. A lot has happened in the last 2 or 3 decades. So these are the best practice kind of things that OCP objectives talk to. So These 7 things are sort of the foundational pieces and explain why we're doing this. It, of course, describes the future state that we hope to achieve in many cases, you know, protecting that natural environment, making, you know, deterring crime, providing good wayfinding, signage, those kinds of things. So these are the things that we envision for the community at the very basic level. So we'll talk about them in the context of each of the guidelines in due course. So our, objectives flow down into policies. This describes what actions to be taken. We're not going to review all of the policies in detail because that would be a lot of words to digest in a presentation this evening, but I'm of course always happy to answer any questions that you may have. I've just put a couple of examples on here to give you the flavor. The most basic, of course, that it is that a development permit must be approved before anything occurs. This echoes the provisions of the Local Government Act. So this is the basis for development permit areas. And it is similar to that for temporary use permits. All development must comply with the conditions stipulated in the permit once it's approved by council. And that helps to inform what the community looks like as it rebuilds, which of course we get one chance to rebuild sometimes. Hopefully we don't have to have another one for a while, right? So we'd like to do it right the first time. So the guidelines, how that action is going to be taken, are really important. And this is where we really start to focus in. These are the primary purposes that we use this planning tool for. We want to improve the quality of the building environment, the built environment, perhaps, advance the public interest, enhance functionality, clarify expectations, ensure neighborliness, and introduce flexibility. So this is not as rigid as those regulations that are contained in the zoning bylaw. These are, well, they're guidelines. And I think we all know, you know, a certain pirate likes to talk about guidelines. Jack Sparrow's not here, but yeah, guidelines are just that. They're a little bit flexible, but they provide important information to people as they start to contemplate what they want to do going forward. So guidelines hope to explain why, give the rationale or intent, depending upon the permit area that you're talking about, provide clear and understandable goals and outcomes to be achieved, and then explain how, maybe through some recommended actions, tools, or providing links to meaningful information that help guide people. And then, of course, the mapping portion defines the geographic area to which these guidelines apply. Often, if you can provide measurable criteria, that's helpful to people. So it makes it easier to achieve the objectives, and that guidance by providing links to other organizations or directing people sometimes provides even more information than you can cobble all into a single document. So that's the intent. So there's a lot in the report and in the attachments, and in particular the text. As I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. At this point, the attachment 4 contains the introductory text for development permit areas. It provides the general guidelines, and this is the first piece of this ongoing puzzle that we're going to start to piece together. So this is the general groundwork. Next time, we'll talk about natural hazard development permit areas. We'll bring forward a floodplain map and even an amendment to regulations to it within the zoning bylaw, because those are appropriate to respond to provincial legislation that has changed. So we really want to pull those out, because those regulations, that conversation where floodplain will continue to walk down through the framework, we're going to stop and consider the rest of the natural hazard development permit areas in more detail at our next session. Madam Mayor, that concludes my comments. As I said, happy to answer questions.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Do we have any questions for Corey or comments? I'm going to share, Corey, that I'm looking at all of the attachments that we received, the DP area summary, the top summary, the OCP draft section, and I'm not, you'll have to forgive me, I read through it all, and I'm not sure where it fits in with your presentation tonight. I hate to say, I'm feeling confused.
Okay. Let me go back. Is my screen still up? Let's go back. Okay, so you'll find attachment. This is attachment 1A is the OCP map.
Okay.
1B is the zoning map. Then we have the development permit areas. So this is the existing text in the OCP as it stands, with some initial comments on what we recommend to change. Then attachment 3 does the same thing with the language for temporary use permits. Then we start to think about, okay, what comes next? And so attachment 4 lays the groundwork. We introduce an introduction so that people know, and there's something in the actual bylaw. Eventually we would say what we're trying to do, and we make it very clear what our purpose is, and you know, to the extent that we're trying to build something, recognizing this is a living document that will change over time. And then we get into part 5, development permit area guidelines. So here's where you've got 5.1, the introduction, 5.2, the legal authorities, 5.3, the overview of the designations, and it talks about the different types of development permits that we're going to have, one for each type of thing. So we have one sensitive environment, which is riparian. We have a natural hazards, which will cover hillsides and wildfire. And then we'll have a comprehensive and temporary use permit area, just to simplify it and keep it as contained as possible. Then we have section 5.4, and we actually get into the purpose of the guidelines. And this is where I shared the why, what, how, and where. So it's essentially just what I've walked you through. We're going to put that language right into the document itself so that it is very clear moving forward that this is where we're at this moment in time. Then 5.5 is general guidelines for all development permit areas. These are really high level objectives. So they apply regardless. Obviously, you know, they're like the motherhood and apple pie statements, if you will. So we can deal with those and lay them out and not have to repeat them in each permit area. So it's a little more efficient to do it this way, and then get into the specifics of each permit area, wildfire, geotechnical, those kinds of things as a separate thing. So this is just the introductory portion for now.
Okay,
So
thank you. I followed intently parts 5.4 and on, but I was lost at the other parts. Other questions or comments, Councillor Toss?
Thank you for the report. Just to clarify, so this is kind of getting us through until we get to fully meet our requirement to update the OCP in its entirety by 2026, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And then the sections 5.1 that are in the package with the blue writing, that is the suggested wording to replace or to be added now.
Yes, so this is the wording that we would recommend we do away with the existing part 5 because it's out of date and not as comprehensive as to explain where we're at. And so this would be new wording. So you would just simply take out parts 5 and 6 and replace it with new parts 5 and 6.
So would you like a motion to that effect, Corey?
Well,
or would you like a discussion around it and potentially
yes, more of a discussion. I would suggest that you receive the report as information and we do that same motion for each of the 5 reports. And if there are comments or discussions or you choose to provide direction, of course, we're always happy to take that. But basically, it's just introduce the information, get the conversation started, hear from folks what might be on their minds with respect to this, both at the council table and if we hear from public, we'll respond. Okay.
Great. Yeah. I have one comment only, and that's 5.2 legal authorities. I'm wondering if protection of the natural and cultural environment might be a worthwhile addition to
It's an interesting thing you bring up. I'm quoting the Local Government Act there. Obviously, I can't change Local Government Act, but I totally agree with you. So we could add something into the text. Those are very specifically the purposes outlined in the act. But I agree with you, and I think it's a matter of time before the province probably does include that in the actual language within the act. So happy to take that comment back. No problem.
Something for discussion. Thank you.
Yes, no problem.
So just for my clarification, you'll be bringing information back over the next 4 or 5 council meetings. And then at that point, after that, you'll be looking for some kind of a decision or endorsement. So in the meantime, this is for information only.
Correct. We want to lay all the pieces out for you so that you can see that we're built, how it builds and how they interact with each other. And then we'll be able to have a fulsome discussion.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions?
Mayor O'Connor, can I just make one comment?
Yes, go ahead.
On it? I just wanted to clarify with Corey. So in the attachments, if council was to want to start to kind of wrap their head around the kind of the new type of language, they would look at attachment 4. Is that correct? So attachments 2 and 3 are going to be, that's what we're going to remove. And attachment 4 is the beginning of what we're going to be adding in. So I'm just saying that because if you wanted to, sort of further your understanding of this project and where we're ultimately going in preparation for a decision that's probably a couple of months down the road yet, that would be the place to focus. Attachment 4, read it, make comments, understand it, that type of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Lightfoot.
I have to admit, I'm somewhat confused myself because when I'm looking at, I think it's attachment 3 I've got open. Oh no, attachment 2. So it's got provisions, OCP, section 5, and then update and or possible content. So are you identifying areas where you need to change the script, or are you saying it's all, because some of it says amend or remove update and or possible content. So it looks like it's a working document. You're still.
So that was our very original a year ago when I pulled it apart and started the project. First thing I did was create a table, copy all the existing wording from the OCP into that table. Then we circulated it amongst ourselves as your consultants, and we put in comments about whether we thought we could just continue on or if we needed to change it. And so that was the very, very first piece. And that gives you just a hint at where we're going as we unfold these 5 reports to you. So don't look at it so much as an amendment to what is existing. As I explained previously, what we envision is saying, here's an amendment to the official community plan. Let's delete the existing parts 5 and 6 and put these new parts 5 and 6 in place of them. That way we don't have to do the track changes or mix the old and the new. So the tables provide you the old, attachment 4 provides you the new.
So it's your worksheets somewhat.
Yeah.
Somewhat, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of receiving this for information?
Did you do
Oh,
first and seconder? I don't
did we, sorry, we didn't put it forward. So we need we have a recommended motion.
So
Councillor, thank you, Councillor Toss, seconder, Councillor Lightfoot. Now all those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor.
Okay, we'll move on to number 8.5.1, Public Works, and we have Brian here. And the first item is washrooms.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Good evening, Council. Bringing a report to Council this evening to discuss the purchase and location of some washroom facilities for the community. At present, currently using the parish hall as facilities, which is an open 24/7. There's also outhouses located throughout the community that are, I think, being used by contractors mostly, but aren't always accessible for everybody. So this would give an option for travelers as well as workers and local residents to use facilities that are plumbed directly into the sewer system. So the hope is that they would be used rather than public spaces, which currently has been observed on numerous occasions by people.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a recommended motion. Who would like to put that motion forward?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle. Seconder?
I'll second.
Second, and comments or questions? Regarding this. So I just, I'll ask a question here. So I do look around and I see that looks like every contractor has their own facility there. So they're taken care of. Even the Mennonite Disaster Services has one set up down where they're working as well. So I'm just wondering who this is going to serve.
People that aren't contractors.
Okay, and
residents, traveling public.
Okay. Councillor Lightfoot.
So I'm looking at the costs and it says 2 double restroom structures and 2 single restroom structures at a total cost of $17,000. I find that extremely cheap.
It is.
Like unbelievably cheap.
Yeah.
And then it says before shipping and taxes. So where are they being shipped from?
Alberta.
Okay, so it could double.
I got quoted. So they actually make a shower unit as well, which I thought was just kind of nasty. So I didn't put that one forward, but a double unit is the same size as a bathroom with a shower. And the quote I got, which isn't in writing yet, was $1,300 from Alberta.
I have to say, I'm inclined to say no. Historically, when everybody had a house, I mean, of course, they had their own facility. traveling public didn't have any public washrooms after, unless they went to the hotel.
Yep.
After, and the info center closed, there was nothing in the winter, the village office was closed. So this is the initial cost for the components, but then the plumbing and putting into the sewer system, of course, will be an additional cost. And then are they ours forever? Because then there would be winterizing and
Yes.
So I'm concerned that the cost is a lot, and hopefully that our other projects that are in the lineup will see more permanent
Yep.
facilities.
Absolutely.
So I'm not convinced, but if someone else,
I don't know, coming in for work and with all the lineups, it'd be nice to have these. And for the amount of people that you see literally stop on the side of the road and relieve themselves. I look at, so you're looking at 4 units for.
That's the suggestion. So right now I've put forward the suggestion of the Totem Hotel site, which we have water currently situated at. Somewhere around the parish hall here, which should just complement what's currently being used. 455 Fraser Street, which is where we're going to be locating. We have located the ATCO trailer, which doesn't have any facilities. We're going to be looking at renting it out potentially or using it ourselves. And again, we'd be walking down to the parish hall to use, or asking Melissa if we can use hers. And then 270 Street. So you're talking about hooking up. Most of these locations are going to require us to put an IC box or an inspection chamber in anyways. So the additional plumbing to this is above ground. We're not looking at, trenching, excavating a big excavation. We'd literally be trying to locate these facilities, which are moved with forklifts in a location that's just a short.
Councillor, Councillor.
So do you see decommissioning them in the winter months then?
Potentially.
I'm just thinking of freezing and.
Yeah, I mean, they've got power to them, for the fan. So that being said, you would be able to power heat tape and keep them from freezing up. I hadn't, ahead of this meeting, I did want to check and see the information to see what it was. The only thing I can see is the ventilation fan is the only opening. So that could be covered in the winter. They do have locks on them, proper locks, not padlocks. So they could be locked. But I'd rather keep them open because, to be honest with you, there's nothing more infuriating than seeing somebody standing on a local resident's property, urinating and.
Councillor Tosta, you had your hand up. Did you have a?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. A couple comments. One, I'm completely in favor of this motion for a variety of reasons. One, I've personally witnessed people urinating in the village, unfortunately on private property. Our sewers aren't ready. So for those people that have invested in sewer infrastructure on their private properties, they don't have the opportunity to link into it. So it might behoove the village to help with the traveling public, with individuals. We didn't have public bathrooms before, as was pointed out by Councillor Lightfoot. True. However, having worked in the village info center, that was a continuing problem and an issue in the village. So that is more of supporting the motion, in my opinion. Construction workers, yes, they have their own facilities typically, but they are sharing right now, and there is a shortage, and they are overflowing from what I've seen. I think I would, and the question for Brian before I sign off here, Brian, is the cost of transport, because I'd be willing to support a bathroom going in beside the ATCO trailer to start, maybe, and then see and monitor the use. I think it's important we have signage, public bathrooms available. It is an amenity that's provided in almost every municipality, bar none, because it's included, that's an expectation for amenity space, is an expectation for taxpayer money. So is it is it going to have one transportation fee then for the 4 units, or could we just get one and not like have to get all 4 at once?
The price that I originally got was for one double unit. It was actually for a shower and washroom, but it would be the same size as a double unit.
So would that be, do you think, sufficient, Brian, to get one maybe for the ATCO trailer site with signage and then see how much it's used and move forward from there?
That's completely
That
up
seem
to you.
reasonable?
That's up to you guys, really.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor McCann.
Thank you. I'm going to just tag on to what Councillor Toss was saying. So, and what has already been raised. So the issues for me are the duration. How long is it going to be there? Is it going to be moved? Are we paying for something for a year, for 2 years, for the rest of whatever? I agree that we need some kind of public washing with water, thinking about summertime. And that originally when we talked about the ATCO trailer, we talked about it being a possible cooling place and having a variety of uses. To me, that's the most logical place to put this. I agree with Councillor Toss that the double unit put there kind of in the middle of town where everybody can see it, easier to look after. Who, like, you get to maintain this, I presume?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't add
Who
that.
gets to clean the toilet? Right?
I didn't add that into the report to council because there is a couple options. One of the options could be hiring a local contractor to clean them. This is the intention of this. I viewed the ones at Desert Hills. They're using them currently right now. And again, other than the electrical fan and obviously the toilet paper, which I think could be covered quite quickly, a pressure washer would be a sufficient job. I don't see anybody on their hands and knees scraping it. So hopefully, and if it does get that bad, we lock it.
Yeah. I think those were mine. But the duration, like, is it going to stay? How long will it stay in the village of Lytton? And
well, they'd be ours
to own.
Yeah,
right?
they'd be ours. So, you know, like I'm thinking again, the info center was basically the public washroom during Riverfest. These could be set up in a location that they're the public washroom. So I mean, I know I've been to public outhouses before and seen many people walk in and walk out and defecate behind it because it's just nasty. Right. So
sorry, you go ahead. Then I'll.
So originally you were suggesting 2 doubles and 2 singles.
Yeah.
Like I think having it by the parish is kind of redundant because when people are here, it's usually open. I like the idea of the ATCO trailer, but what about the public works building? Do the workers have anything down in the public works site?
The only public works site is the wastewater treatment plant. That's
okay, right.
It has a public washer or it has a washer.
Right. Okay. I was thinking, I am being convinced. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we should half it, but I don't know what the benefit of a single over. I mean, obviously there's twice as many units in the double, but if like, why would you even go for a single?
Like the single for the ATCO trailer would, I would think, as long as there's a double, you're just really looking at that facility, right? Whereas a double located around the totem or where the old swimming pool would be more of a public mom and kids, or 2 people, right?
Yeah.
So they're not
somebody's not for too long
dancing outside. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions? No. So I'm not willing to support this as written. I personally don't see the need for 4 units. I would like to see some kind of a plan for maintenance, cleaning, that sort of thing. I think we need to understand that. I don't know, because if it's a public facility, is there any public health things we need to be thinking of? I don't know whether they need to have any kind of inspections or anything like that. I would support a unit at the ATCO trailer. We are a walkable community. People can walk to use a washroom. I don't think we need them at all ends. Yeah. You mentioned Desert Hills, and I know hundreds and hundreds of people go through Desert Hills every day.
Yep.
We don't see that here. The contractors right now all have their own washrooms. There's the odd home property owner coming through that needs them, until their houses are built. There aren't tons of tourists because we don't have anything here for the tourists yet. We are planning public washrooms with our community hub, and I know that's still down the road, but hopefully coming sooner than later. That once we get reasons for public to be in the community, we'll have washrooms. So I would be willing to amend this to say, I don't know, say add double.
Yes.
Double facility at the ATCO trailer. If that.
Yeah, I like Councilor Toss's idea of monitoring and keeping some data and just seeing how that seems to be working out, and to determine any future plans need to change that.
It's gonna be hard to monitor if it's plumbed into the sewer system.
Just to see
I think
how hard it is to look after, and if it looks like it's being used.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was visiting another community this weekend, and there were public washrooms right there, and there were people urinating in the bushes, even though they were there. So, yeah, I just thought I'd put that out there. Councillor Toss, your hand was up again.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I appreciate the amendment. That I'd support that wholeheartedly. I do think it's important we have signage as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Second the motion.
Second the motion, second the amendments. Okay, so Councillor Lightfoot, are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, thank you, Brian, for that. Okay, now on to the 5th Street Water and Sewer Extension, and Brian, you as well for this.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. So this is requesting that we award a contract to Lake Excavating for an amount of $24,875 before taxes to do the water and sewer extension. The property 273 on 5th Street. This is to avoid what was in place, which was crossing private property to service that building. So.
Okay, so we have a recommended motion. Councillor Lightfoot will move the recommended motion. Seconder, Councillor McCann. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Lightfoot.
I'm just curious. So we're providing service up to the property line?
Provide, yes.
Okay. I want to be consistent and fair, because we'll be doing a lot of this. And historically, it was the village provides service up to the property line, and then property owner is responsible for the rest.
Absolutely.
Great. Just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
I mean, there is some discussion. There is a significant difference between one bid and the other. Just some clarifications on the report as of this afternoon. I still haven't gotten the approval for the ARC plan, but I don't anticipate any real issues or concerns with that. Some of the cost savings are the fact that this contractor is currently in the community. So their demobilization and mobilization costs that other contractors had bid on obviously wasn't part of it. There is, so council's aware, there is going to be some additional costs in material to try and lift the grade of the road up to address the height of the property, which from backfill has changed things a little bit from original.
Okay, Councillor Toss.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly support this. My question is perhaps to CAO Montbriquet around how can we avoid delaying sewer work when it's like say an under $30,000 amount that's just going to slow the process down when it's pretty much a necessary work. It's a given. I think you have authority to okay a cost up to 50,000, if I remember. Is it possible to make a motion to say sewer upgrades perhaps can be done without coming to council, or
Well, and
or a
the
report?
yeah, and my authority is actually 15,000,
Okay.
which is why this report is here.
Okay.
Because yeah, I completely agree though, for particularly as we're working through a bunch of these items that are kind of the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
You know, it does, you know, it does always slow it down somewhat because we have to wait for a meeting and then, you know, that kind of thing. So,
What would be your suggestion to mitigate
well,
those?
we'd probably need to look at the delegation bylaw, which is where that authority gets given to me.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I can ask Lisa Storoshenko to pull that out and we can take a look at that.
Thank you very much, CEO Lumbercat.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for that, Councillor Toss. Councillor McCann.
Yeah. So Brian, we're talking about putting a sewer along the road to go up to somebody's property. Is this correct?
Yeah.
And is this like Alonzo Way? Is that the road we're on here? Or what?
It's coming from Alonzo Way.
And going up that little?
Yeah.
Does that little road have a name?
Fitzer.
Oh, okay, that's good.
It's the extension.
Right, of course.
The hospital
cut off it. Right.
The hospital.
Nice picture. Where the hell is it? Oh, okay. And so, but before it went through someone's property instead of staying on the roadway or whatever.
Yeah, it went through, I guess it was the teachers.
Okay, yeah. So, but the road itself is kind of a mess anyway, right? Is that still like part of the problem? Oh, is it? Oh, good, it's better. I haven't been there.
It could use some improvement.
Yeah.
So I'm not really looking at trying to put that to the contractor.
No.
That's something I think.
Okay, just that my mind playing maybe here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Brian. So we'll move on to item 9.1, and we do have a bylaw for adoption, and that is the Growing Communities Reserve Fund. We have a recommended motion. Councillor Lightfoot, a seconder. Councillor McCann, any questions or comments regarding this? And seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, and we move on to correspondence. We have two items, one from Premier David Eby regarding the UBCM convention, requests for meetings, and one from Minister Kang, the same topic. So we have a motion, recommended motion to receive these correspondence for information. Who would like to make that? Thank you, Councillor Michelle, a seconder. Councillor McCann, and any comments or questions regarding this? And seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to verbal reports, and I will begin. All right, so 2 weeks ago, we held the council meeting, and since that last meeting, I attended a TNRD meeting in Kamloops. It was one day. Thankfully, I didn't have to stay over. I met with Bob McCabe from Lillooet Timber Mart and Jason Robertson from LFN. And I think we've all seen the announcement that Timber Mart is setting up a pop-up hardware store on LFN land over at the drive-in site. So it was a welcome service to our community. You know, we welcome that. And not only for the people rebuilding, but just for community members in general. I was told that it would be next day service so that if they don't have something in stock in their inventory, they will have next day delivery, everything from building supplies to garden hoses. So whatever we need, which I think, as I said, just a great additional service to our community. I want to congratulate and thank the May Day Long Weekend Committee for another job well done. On Saturday of the May Long Weekend, along with Councillor McCann, we met with groups from Fraserlands Church who were here supporting the weekend. And together we shared the story of Lytton and toured them around the village. So it was an educational experience for those people from Vancouver. I didn't take in all of the events of the weekend, but I certainly enjoyed the pancake breakfast and the river walk. I attended the Pacifican meeting for businesses here in the hall on May 23rd. Community Futures and Pacifican were here to meet with business owners look at their programs they're offering. Today, I participated in the webinar with the province regarding the guidelines for requesting meetings with ministers at UBCM, but not only for ministers, but meetings with staff and corporations. So those are offered as well. And of course, UBCM is in September, so coming up. So that's it for my report, and I will move on to Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I do not have a lot to report. I attended the chamber meeting on May 15th of Lytton Chamber of Commerce. The last director's role was filled by a local John Coyle, which is wonderful. A welcome addition, a really great group there. And LFN ECDev group should be congratulated on all, like you mentioned, Mayor O'Connor, the work that's being done, including the Builders Mart. They've got, of course, the workers' accommodation at the airport and the and the Timber World, and what am I forgetting? Workers' accommodation and the concrete patch. And then some residents have tapped into the Pacifican funding, which is great. I've heard there's a proposal up above Loring for a glamping site that was approved, which is exciting. That completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. It was busy with the May weekend stuff, and it was fun to do the tour of Lytton with Patrick Michelle and the people from Fraserlands Church. I thought the Canyon Cruise show and shine was well received up at the hotel as well, and that was kind of fun. Before that, was it before that? I don't know. Go to meetings, right? I went to the Fire Smart meeting and was intrigued that at that one we met the new Fire Smart crews that LFN has hired. And so it's really good to see that kind of work being done in the community and watching those teams kind of work their way out and get things done with people. And just going to benefit everyone. What else do I have? I think that was it. I also went to the business thing the other day and attended coffee. Yep, I think, Comsheen Heritage meetings, I went to those as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot.
Not much to report. I attended coffee on Monday, and other than that, I spent a lot of time in the garden and had some out of province visitors, which made the weekend nice.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, that is it for open meeting. We're now going to be moving into closed meeting, and we have the recommended motion written here, but who would like to make that motion? Councillor Lightfoot, and seconder Councillor McCann. All those in favor? Carried. So we will be moving into closed meeting, and I'm going to turn it back over to CEO Storoshenko. Thank you.
Honor. So that concludes the public portion of the regular council meeting of May 28th. We ask that the public and staff please remove yourselves from the meeting as we go into our closed session. So thank you for attending today and have a wonderful night. I invite council to take a short recess while I reset the meeting to close. Yeah.
Finish recording.
I'll just 2 minutes. Oh, wait,
Okay, well, thank you.